The wrong gift. The night was silent in the alien city. Tall towers made of dark stone reached into the sky, glowing with strange blue lights. At the center of the city, a group of armored guards carried a small covered cage. Inside was a young alien girl, her eyes wide with fear. She had been raised to believe she was nothing more than a gift, something to be traded between powerful men. Tonight she was being sent to a new master. The guards spoke little as they walked. Their faces were hidden under masks. The cage rattled. Every time they turned a corner, the girl did not cry. She had cried long ago until no tears were left. Now she only waited, afraid but silent. They reached a wide metal door guarded by soldiers. The captain of the guards looked at his scroll and nodded. "Deliver to the human," he said. His men pushed the cage forward. The door opened with a heavy sound. Inside stood a tall man. Not like the aliens, his skin was pale, his eyes sharp, and his stance steady. He wore no heavy armor, only a simple dark coat. He looked at the guards, then at the cage. His brow furrowed. The captain bowed slightly. "By order of Lord Threx, the gift is delivered." The man's face darkened. "Gift?" he said slowly. His voice was deep and calm, but it carried weight. The guard set the cage down and quickly stepped back. "Yes, Commander?" The captain answered. "She is yours now, as tradition demands." The human commander stared at the trembling figure inside the cage. His jaw tightened. He opened the cage door and the girl shrank back, expecting a hand to strike her. Instead, the human knelt down to her level. His eyes met hers, and for the first time in her life she saw something strange. Pity. "What is this?" he asked quietly. "What have you done?" The captain shifted uncomfortably. "She was meant to please, to serve. She is a token of respect." The commander stood, his eyes burning now. "Take her back," he ordered. "I am not part of this sickness." The guards looked at each other nervously. "It is not possible," the captain said. "The gift is given, and it cannot be returned. To refuse would mean insult. Lord Threx will see it as betrayal." Silence filled the room. The girl looked between the aliens and the human, her heart pounding. She had been passed from place to place all her life, but never had someone hesitated like this. Never had someone spoken against the tradition. The commander slowly turned to her again. He saw her thin arms, her hollow cheeks, and her frightened eyes. She was not a prize, she was a prisoner. "No," he said firmly. His voice echoed in the chamber. "She will not go back." The guards froze. The captain stepped forward. "Commander, you cannot." The human's hand moved to the weapon at his side, but he did not draw it. His eyes locked on the captain's. "Tell Threx this," he said. "If he wishes to take her, he must come himself." The air grew heavy. The guards felt the weight of his words. None of them dared move closer. They turned and left, leaving the cage behind. The metal door shut with a loud crash. The girl sat frozen, staring at the human. She expected anger, punishment, or worse. Instead, he reached out his hand, open and gentle. "You are safe here," he said. "What is your name?" Her lips trembled. She had a name once, long ago, but it had been taken from her. No one had asked it in years. She whispered, I don't remember." The human's eyes softened. He nodded slowly. "Then we will find it together." For the first time in her life, the girl felt something inside her chest. Hope. It was faint, fragile, but it was there. She did not know why this human was different, why he refused to treat her like an object. All she knew was that he did not return her. Outside the city, whispers began to spread. The human commander had broken tradition. He had kept the gift. He had defied Lord Threx. The alien empire would not forget this insult. And soon the storm would come. But inside that room, for one quiet moment, the girl sat close to the man who had chosen not to give her away. And she believed, maybe for the first time, that her life could mean something more. The night after. The girl arrived. The human commander did not sleep. He sat by the small fire burning in the corner of his quarters. his eyes fixed on the stars outside the window. The girl curled up on a blanket near the wall, afraid to close her eyes. She thought he might change his mind by morning and send her back. But when the first light touched the city towers, the human still sat there, silent and unmoving. A heavy knock came at the door. The sound echoed through the stone hall. The girl flinched. The commander stood slowly and opened it. 3 alien officers stood outside, each wearing polished armor that glimmered with green light. Behind them waited more guards with sharp weapons ready. The tallest officer bowed stiffly. "Commander, Lord Threx demands the return of the gift." His voice was cold, every word sharp like a blade. The human did not bow. He stood tall, his face calm but hard. "Tell your lord no," he said. The officer's eyes narrowed. "You risk war with him." The commander stepped aside, letting them see the girl. She shrank back against the wall, clutching the blanket tighter. The officer smirked. "She belongs to Lord Threx. Do not think your refusal will be ignored." "She belongs to no one," the commander said firmly. His voice cut through the air like steel. "Not to me and not to him." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Aliens in the Empire were not used to being challenged, especially not by a human outsider. One of them leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Do you understand what you are doing? This is not a broken trade or a lost shipment. This is insult, and insult brings blood." The commander's eyes did not waver. "Then let it bring blood." The words shocked even the girl. She looked at him in disbelief. No one had ever spoken against the Empire like that. She could not understand why this human would risk his life for her. The officers straightened, anger burning in their eyes. "So be it," the tallest one hissed. "You will regret this." They turned sharply and marched away, their armored boots striking the ground like thunder. When the door closed, silence returned. The girl stared at the commander, her hands trembling. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice was so soft he almost missed it. He looked at her and shook his head. "Because no one should live in chains." She had no answer. Her heart pounded in her chest. For years she had been told she was worthless. But now this human's refusal made her feel like she mattered, just a little. That day the news spread fast. Whispers ran through markets, taverns, and barracks. The human had refused Threx. The alien citizens laughed at first, thinking he would soon be crushed. But as hours passed and no soldiers stormed his quarters, people began to wonder, what made this human so bold? What power did he have that gave him courage? The girl felt it too. She watched him move around the room, calm and steady. He prepared food and handed her a bowl. She hesitated before taking it, still expecting a trick. But when she tasted the warm stew, tears stung her eyes. It was simple food, but it was the first meal anyone had given her without expecting anything in return. As night fell again, footsteps gathered outside the commander's door. Dozens of citizens now waited in the shadows. Some came out of curiosity, others to see the human who dared stand against a lord. A few even whispered that maybe he could change things. The commander ignored the murmurs, but the girl could hear them through the walls. Her chest tightened. For the first time, she wondered if his refusal was not only about her. Maybe it was about something larger, something dangerous. The next morning, another visitor arrived, not in armor but in fine robes. He was a messenger of Threx. His thin smile carried venom. "My lord is merciful," he said smoothly. "Return. The girl and all will be forgiven. You may even earn a seat in his court." The commander stared at him without speaking. The silence stretched until the messenger's smile began to fade. Finally, the human said, "No." The word echoed, sharp and final. The messenger's eyes turned cold. He leaned close. "Then you will not live long enough to regret it." He left, slamming the door behind him. The girl looked at the commander, her throat dry. She whispered again, "Why not just give me back?" The commander sat across from her, his voice steady. "Because you are not an object to give away. You are a person." Her eyes filled with tears. No one had ever said that to her before. That night, soldiers gathered outside the city gates preparing to march. Lord Threx was furious. His pride was wounded, and wounded pride was more dangerous than any weapon. The storm was coming and the human had chosen his side. But inside the small room, the girl sat beside the fire with the man who had refused to give her up. And in that moment, she felt for the first time in her life that maybe she had a future worth fighting for. The city outside was restless. Rumors spread faster than fire. People whispered that Lord Threx was gathering soldiers. Some said the human commander would be killed by dawn. Others believed he had some hidden power. Inside the commander's quarters, though, the world felt strangely quiet. The young alien girl sat near the fire, her eyes following the human's every move. At first, she expected him to treat her like the others had. She waited for harsh orders, cruel words, or a heavy hand. But none came. Instead, he moved calmly, speaking little. His silence was not cold. It was steady, like the silence of stone. One morning, he placed a wooden bowl in front of her. Steam rose from the food. The smell filled the air. She hesitated, her hands shaking. She thought it might be poisoned, but the human sat across from her and ate from his own bowl. Only then did she slowly taste the meal. It was warm and simple, yet to her, it felt like the first real kindness she had ever known. Days passed. The human asked nothing of her. He did not lock her away. He did not order her to kneel. Instead, he let her sit near the fire, sleep when she wished, and eat when food was ready. Slowly, her shoulders began to relax. She still flinched at loud sounds, but her fear started to loosen, like a rope coming undone. One evening, she gathered courage and whispered, "Why do you keep me?" The commander looked at her from across the fire. His eyes were sharp but not cruel. "I do not keep you," he said. "You can walk out that door if you wish." Her lips parted, stunned by his words. No one had ever given her such a choice. She looked at the heavy door, her heart pounding. She could leave, but where would she go? The city belonged to Threx. The streets were filled with danger, and for some reason she did not yet understand. The idea of leaving him made her chest hurt. I will stay," she whispered. The commander only nodded. He did not smile, but there was a softness in his eyes she had not seen before. That night, she dreamed for the first time of something other than chains. She dreamed of stars and freedom. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between them grew. She began to watch the way he trained each morning, moving through drills with calm precision. His movements were strong and exact, like a blade guided by purpose. Sometimes she sat at the edge of the courtyard hugging her knees and he pretended not to notice her watching. But inside, he did notice. One afternoon, he handed her a small wooden staff. Her eyes widened. "I cannot," she whispered. "You can," he answered simply. He showed her how to stand, how to grip the staff. Her hand shook at first, but he was patient. His voice steady, never raised. When she stumbled, he only said, "Again." Something stirred inside her then, a spark she had never felt. She was not just surviving anymore, she was learning. In the evenings, they sometimes sat by the fire without speaking. She found comfort in the silence. It was not the silence of fear, but of peace. Slowly, words began to come. From her lips at first, just a few, then more. She told him small things about her past, about how she had been taken as a child, about how her name had been erased. The commander listened without judgment. His eyes held the weight of understanding. One night, as the stars glowed bright outside the window, she whispered, "Will Threx kill you?" The commander poked the fire with a stick. Sparks flew upward. "He will try," he said calmly, "but I will not make it easy." She looked at him, fear rising again. "Why risk everything for me?" His gaze turned to her, steady and sharp. "Because you deserve more than to be owned." Her throat tightened. She had no answer, but tears filled her eyes. She turned her face away so he would not see. But he did see, and for the first time he allowed himself a small smile. Outside, shadows gathered. Spies of Threx whispered of the bond forming in the humans' quarters. They carried reports back to their master, and Threx grew more furious. Each day, to him, the humans' refusal was not only rebellion, it was insult. The Empire could not allow such defiance to spread, yet inside those walls the bond deepened. She began to feel that maybe her life was more than chains, more than fear. With every small kindness, every steady word, the human was building something stronger than she had ever known, trust. And as the fire burned low one night, she thought a dangerous thought. What if she was no longer just a gift? What if she was his friend? The Empire did not forget, Lord. Threx was a man of pride, and pride once wounded turned into rage. For weeks he had waited, expecting the human commander to bend under pressure. But the human did not bend. He did not return the girl, and that refusal burned like fire in Threx's chest. In the dark halls of his fortress, Threx slammed his hand against the table. "He dares insult me," he growled. His generals stood, in silence, none brave enough to speak. Finally, Threx leaned forward, his eyes glowing with fury. "Send my soldiers. Bring the girl back and bring me the human's head." The order spread quickly. Soon, whispers filled the city. People gathered, in markets and taverns, speaking in hushed voices. Some pitied the human, others laughed at his coming death. But a few watched with quiet respect, for he had done what no one else dared. Inside the commander's quarters, the girl felt the change in the air. She saw more soldiers patrolling the streets. She noticed the way citizens glanced toward their door and quickly turned away. One evening, as the commander sharpened his blade by the fire, she whispered, "They are coming for us." He did not look up. "I know," he said calmly. The sound of the steel against the stone was steady, like a heartbeat. Her hands trembled. "You cannot fight them all." The commander paused, then looked at her. His eyes were calm. "Maybe not, but I can fight enough to make them bleed." Petty words frightened her, but they also gave her courage. He was not running, he was standing. That night the threat arrived, heavy footsteps echoed outside the door. The girl froze, her breath caught in her throat. The commander rose, his blade at his side. The door shook as a fist pounded against it. "Open!" a deep voice commanded. "By order of Lord Threx, the girl is his." The commander stood in silence. The pounding grew louder. "Open or be crushed," the voice thundered. Finally, the commander answered. His voice was steady, cold as iron. "Tell Threx this. If he wants her, he must come himself." The silence outside was sharp. Then the soldiers roared in anger. The door burst open. Armored figures stormed inside. Weapons gleamed in the firelight. The girl screamed and pressed against the wall. The commander moved like a shadow. His blade flashed, striking the first soldier down. Sparks flew as steel met steel. The small room became a storm of sound. Shouts, the clash of weapons, the crack of firewood breaking. The girl's heart pounded. She had seen violence before, but never like this. The human did not fight like the others. He did not fight with cruelty or fear. He fought with purpose. Each movement was precise, each strike final. He was outnumbered, yet he did not fall. One soldier grabbed the girl's arm, dragging her toward. "The door!" she cried out. But before the soldier could pull her away, the commander struck. His blade cut through the air, and the soldier dropped. The girl stumbled back, shaking. The battle raged until the floor was slick with blood. At last, the remaining soldiers staggered out, shouting that the human was a demon. The door crashed shut, silence falling again, broken only by the crackle of the fire. The commander lowered his blade, blood dripping from the edge. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. The girl stared at him, her body trembling. She whispered, "Why risk all this? Why not give me back?" He looked at her, his eyes still burning with the fire of battle. "Because you are not his to take." Tears filled her eyes. She sank to the floor, covering her face. She did not know what to say. No one had ever fought. For her, no one had ever risked so much. That night, word of the fight spread across the city. Some called the human a fool, others called him brave. Even the lowest slaves whispered his name with awe. For once, someone had stood against Threx and lived, but Threx himself was not finished. In his fortress, he listened to the reports with a dark smile. So the human bleeds but does not break, he muttered. Good. It will make his fall more satisfying. He began to prepare something greater than soldiers, something darker. Back in the quarters, the girl sat by the fire, her eyes red from tears. She looked at the commander, who sat quietly cleaning his blade. They will come again, she whispered. He nodded. Yes, her voice shook. And you will fight again. Yes, he said, his voice calm. She stared into the fire, her fear and confusion twisting into something new. For the first time in her life, she wanted to stand beside someone, not behind them. She wanted to be more than a burden, more than a gift. And deep inside, a dangerous thought grew. If the human was willing to risk his life for her, maybe she could find the courage to risk hers for him. The city no longer felt safe. The human commander could see it in the way people looked at him on the streets. Some eyes were filled with fear, some with pity, but many with silent respect. Still, he knew respect would not save them when Threx decided to strike again. The girl felt it too. Every sound outside the quarters made her heart race. Every shadow looked like soldiers. She barely slept, and when she did, her dreams were filled with chains and blood. One night she whispered, "He will send more, won't he?" The commander nodded, his face calm but firm. "Yes, and next time it will not only be soldiers, it will be war." The girl's hands trembled. "Then what do we do?" He looked into the fire, his eyes reflecting. "The flames. We leave." The word struck her like a shock. She had never thought of leaving. She had never imagined a life beyond Threx's city. But the idea sparked something inside her, hope mixed with fear. The next day, the commander moved with quiet purpose. He gathered supplies, weapons, and food. He studied maps of trade routes and hidden paths. The girl watched him, feeling a strange mix of safety and dread. He was planning for both of them, not just himself. That truth filled her chest with warmth. By the third night, they were ready. The city was dark and silent when they slipped out. The streets were narrow, shadows deep. The girl clung to his side as they moved past patrols. The commander walked with steady steps, his hand always near his weapon. At the gates, guards stood tall with spears. The commander pulled the girl into a shadowed alley. His voice was low. "When I move, follow close, do not stop." Her heart pounded, but she nodded. She trusted him now more than she trusted her own breath. When the guards turned their backs, the commander moved like lightning. In one motion, he struck them down. Without a sound, the girl gasped softly but kept moving as he guided her through the gate and into the wild lands beyond. The air outside was sharp and cold. The city lights faded behind them. Ahead stretched a vast desert, its sand glowing faintly under the moons. The girl had never seen it before. Her eyes widened, awe mixing with fear. They traveled through the night, their footsteps leaving faint trails in the sand. The commander carried the heavier load, his movement steady despite the weight. The girl followed, sometimes stumbling but always catching herself. When dawn broke, they found shelter under a rocky outcrop. The girl sank to the ground, exhausted. The commander gave her water, then stood watch. His eyes never stopped scanning the horizon. As she drank, she whispered, "Why take me with you? I slow you down." He looked at her, his gaze steady. "Because you are not a burden." Her chest tightened. No one had ever said that to her. She felt tears welling, but she blinked them away. Instead, she whispered, "I will try to be strong." The commander gave a small nod. "That is enough." For days they moved through the desert. The sun burned during the day. The cold bit at night. The girl stumbled, her body weak, but the commander always slowed his pace to match hers. When she could not walk further, he lifted her onto his back without complaint. Each night, they built a small fire. She sat close, her eyes following his calm movements as he checked weapons and studied the stars. Slowly, she began to speak more, asking questions about the worlds beyond, about the stars, about freedom. The commander answered, in short words, but each answer carried weight. One night she asked softly, "What is freedom like?" He looked at the fire, his jaw tight. It is not easy, it is not safe, but it is worth everything. Her heart swelled. She did not fully understand, but she wanted to. But even in the desert, Threx's shadow stretched far. Scouts began to follow their trail. The commander noticed the signs, disturbed sand, faint footprints, distant glimmers of armor in the moonlight. He knew they were running out of time. One evening, as the sun dipped below the dunes, he turned to her. "We will not stop tonight. We push until morning." Her legs shook, but she nodded. She would not slow him. Not now. Through the night they marched, the wind howling across the sand. At dawn, the sound of horns carried over the dunes. Soldiers were closing in. The girl's heart raced. "They found us." The commander's face was calm, though his eyes burned. "Then we keep moving." Behind them, the desert shook with the march of soldiers. Ahead, the horizon glowed faintly with the promise of distant mountains, and between them stretched the endless sands. The girl stumbled, then steadied herself. She looked at the man beside her, the human who had refused to return her, who had fought for her, who now carried her into the unknown. For the first time in her life, she felt she had something worth running for, not just running from. The desert stretched endlessly behind them. For days they had walked without pause. But the sound of horns and the shimmer of armor on the horizon told them there was no escape. The girl's steps grew weaker, her feet dragging through the sand. The commander looked at her and knew she could go no further. Ahead lay jagged cliffs, sharp and unforgiving. The rocks rose like teeth from the ground, and at the base was a narrow canyon. The commander guided her there. His voice was steady, though his eyes were hard. "We will stand here." The girl's heart raced. Stand. But there are too many. He looked at her with calm fire. "Then we make them pay for every step." They moved into the canyon, the walls high and close. Only a few soldiers could enter at once. The commander positioned her behind a boulder. "Stay low, no matter what happens," he said. Her hands trembled. "And you." He drew his blade, its edge catching the pale light. "I will hold the line." The sound of marching grew louder. Sand poured down the cliffs as soldiers approached. Soon the first armored figures entered the canyon, their weapons gleaming. They laughed when they saw only one human standing there. "Step aside, outsider," one shouted. "The girl belongs to Lord Threx." The commander's voice echoed against the stone, cold and sharp. "She belongs to no one." The soldiers roared and charged. The first clash was thunder. Steel rang, sparks flew. The commander moved with deadly precision, his blade cut through the air, each strike ending a life. The canyon walls shook with the sound of battle. The girl pressed against the boulder, her heart pounding. She watched in terror and awe as the human fought. He was outnumbered, yet he did not fall. Every movement was controlled, every step placed with purpose. He was not fighting only for survival. He was fighting for her. Bodies fell, and more soldiers poured in. The commander's arms grew heavy, his breaths deeper. Blood streaked his coat, but his eyes still burned. The soldiers shouted curses, calling him a demon, but still he stood. One soldier broke past and rushed toward the girl. She screamed, but the commander spun, his blade flashing. The soldier fell before he could touch her. The commander's voice rang out. "You will not take her." The girl's chest tightened. Tears blurred her vision. She whispered to herself, "Why does he fight so hard for me?" The canyon floor was slick with blood. The sun dipped lower, painting the cliffs red. Still, the soldiers pressed forward. The commander fought on, each swing slower but stronger, each strike a wall of defiance. At last, a horn sounded. The soldiers pulled back, dragging their wounded. With them, the canyon fell silent except for the commander's heavy breaths. He leaned on his blade, his chest rising and falling. The girl rushed to his side, her hands shaking as she touched his arm. "You are hurt." He looked at her, his face pale but steady. "I am alive. That is enough." She tried to hold back her tears, but they spilled down her cheeks. "You could have left me. You could have saved yourself." His eyes softened, though his voice was still firm. Did not save you. You saved me. Her breath caught. Me. He nodded. You gave me a reason to fight. Her heart swelled with something she had never felt before, something fierce and warm. She pressed her hand over his, gripping it tightly. Outside, the canyon, soldiers regrouped, their voices carried on the wind. Threx himself would soon arrive. His pride demanded it. His wrath would not be satisfied until the human was crushed and the girl taken. The commander listened to the distant sound, his jaw tightened. He knew the fight was not over. The worst was still to come, but in that narrow canyon, with the girls, hand holding his, he felt a strength deeper than steel. He had stood against the Empire and still breathed. He had shown them that a human's will was not so easily broken. The girl looked into his eyes, her voice trembling but steady. Then, I will fight too. He shook his head. Not yet, you are not ready. But she lifted her chin, fire sparking in her eyes. I will be. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then the commander allowed himself the smallest smile. Then we will stand together. The desert wind howled through the canyon, carrying the promise of another battle. Threx's fury was marching closer with every heartbeat, but the human and the girl did not run. They would not hide. They would stand. The canyon lay in silence after the battle. The ground was stained red, broken weapons scattered like bones. The human commander leaned against the rock wall, his blade still in his hand. The girl stayed close to him, her eyes wide. Her heart, heavy with fear and hope, she knew this was not the end, and she was right. As the sun rose over the cliffs, the sound of drums carried across the desert. Heavy and slow, they shook the very ground. Dust rose on the horizon, and with it came Lord Threx. His army stretched wide, armored beasts pulling heavy war machines. Thousands of soldiers marched in perfect rows. At the front rode Threx himself, his armor black and gold. His face twisted with fury. The girl's breath caught, she whispered. He has come. The commander pushed himself to his feet, his eyes calm though his body was weary. Good, he said quietly. It ends here. The army stopped at the mouth of the canyon. Threx's voice thundered. Human, you have insulted me, you have stolen what is mine. Return the girl and I may let you die quickly. The commander's voice echoed back, strong and unshaken. She is not yours. She will never be yours. The soldiers roared with anger. Threx raised his hand, and the noise fell silent. His eyes, narrowed, burning with pride and hate. Then I will crush you, and she will crawl back to me. The girl trembled. She looked at the endless army, then at the man beside her. He stood tall though his body carried wounds. His will did not break, but she knew he could not fight them all, not alone. And then, something inside her broke free. A chain she had carried her whole life snapped. Her voice, small and trembling, rose louder than she ever thought it could. I am not yours. The canyon fell silent. Soldiers stared in shock. Threx's head turned slowly, his eyes wide with disbelief. The girl stepped forward from behind, the boulder, her body shaking but her chin lifted high. I am not a gift, not a thing, not something to trade, she cried. I choose. Her words echoed like thunder through the canyon walls. For the first time in her life, she had spoken for herself. Threx's face twisted in rage. You dare, he bellowed. You are mine by law, by tradition. The girl shook her head, her voice steady now. Your law is nothing to me. I choose. Him? She turned and stood beside the commander, her small hand gripping his arm. I belong with him, not as a gift, not as property, but because I choose. The soldiers shifted uneasily. Some lowered their eyes. Others whispered to one another. For years they had followed Threx without question, but never had they heard words like this. The commander placed his hand gently over hers. His voice was calm but carried like steel. You hear her choice, Threx, and if you try to take her, you will face me. Threx roared with fury. His pride could not accept it. Then both of you will die. He raised his arm to command his army forward, but something strange happened. The soldiers did not move. Many stared at the girl, at the human. Some looked at each other, doubt in their eyes. Tradition was strong, but so was the sight before them. One man standing against an empire, one girl finding her voice. Threx shouted again, "Move!" But the hesitation grew. A murmur rippled through the army. A question none dared. Speak aloud. What if the human was right? What if the girl was more than a gift? The commander's voice rang clear. You fight for a man's pride, I fight for her freedom. Who do you think will stand longer? The silence stretched. Then slowly, soldiers began to lower their weapons. Not all, but enough. Threx's fury turned to disbelief. Traitors, he spat. All of you. The commander lifted his blade, his stance steady. His body was weary, but his will burned brighter than the sun. The girl stood with him, no longer hiding, her eyes fierce. Threx glared at them, his chest heaving. For the first time, he saw that this battle was lost. Not by blade, but by spirit. He pulled his beast around and snarled, "This is not over." Then he rode back, his army breaking apart behind him. When the dust settled, silence returned. The girl's legs shook, and she almost fell. But the commander caught her. His voice was quiet. "You spoke." Tears filled her eyes. "I was afraid, but I could not let him decide for me anymore." He looked at her with pride. "You chose. That is enough." For the first time in her life, she felt free, not because someone had given her freedom, but because she had claimed it. She had chosen her own path. As the sun set over the canyon, the human and the girl stood side by side. They were no longer master and gift, no longer prisoner and savior. They were equals, bound not by chains but by choice. And from that day, their story spread through the empire, a story not of warlords or lords, but of a human who refused and a girl who chose, a story that would not be forgotten.